can try. I've got line of sight.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 1 of True Line of Sight. My name's Chandler. I'm here with Jaden. How's it going, Jaden?
It's going well. It's going well. I'm excited about 40K right now.
I know, right? Yeah, we are just coming hot off the heels of the Las Vegas Open, which it's always been one of our favorite events ever, but for different games.
Yep.
And this was our first foray, being able to kind of head into that. Kind of from the outside perspective, I guess, in a lot of ways. Like I've been playing Warhammer for a couple of years, but this was the first time I've been playing it enough that I was like, that's what I'm going to LVO for. So,
Same.
which pretty exciting. Yeah. It was a pretty wacky event. Like, so we, anybody who has any background with us, we were prior War Machine players, so we're used to kind of nice regular human-sized events, and then walked face first into a 960 person tournament.
Yep.
The Warhammer room was always like that room absolutely packed full of human beings that we never went into, right?
Yeah, you never go inside those doors.
It's like, oh, there's all those things. And you knew when lunch came because everybody just piled out of there and the whole area became super crowded. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that got to be us.
Yeah, it got to be us. It was kind of interesting to actually jump into the middle of it. It's just it's a lot of human beings. So one nice thing about Las Vegas Open is, so Jaden flies in, but I'm able to drive there. And so we actually stayed not at the Rio. A very funny thing about the Rio, so I have a lot of ups and downs about the Rio as a venue, but one of the nice things about it is I actually think it's better to stay outside the hotel and drive there.
I agree.
Because the parking lot is so close to the convention center. And it's free, which is wild, because LVO used to be at Bali's. And Bali's, it was free for a while, but it cost money. But it was also like a 1.5 mile walk from like parking to the convention hall.
Yeah.
This one, you just roll right up. Like I had friends like go up to their rooms, and it would take longer than it would for me to just like, I could almost drive back to my hotel and back in the time it took them to come back sometimes.
Yes, it was several thousand steps to get back to the room and then back to the convention hall. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, you had to go up to a couple of the rooms a couple of times. Yeah, the downside being there's nothing to eat in that place that is convenient. It's
nor cheap.
Pain. Yeah, it's not cheap. Yeah, not cheap or convenient. And with 1 hour for lunch, normally 1 hour for lunch seems wild. We didn't, as War Machine players, we never even got that, right?
Correct.
War Machine, lunches. It was like, just bring some granola bars, guy. Like you should have thought ahead, and you just play round after round. But you'd feel like an hour for lunch should be plenty, and it has been for other events I've been to. But with the way Rio is set up, finding food in that period of time is very hard. Actually,
yes,
you have to zoom. You gotta have a plan every time. But that said, overall, it's a good con hall. It's a really nice space. We got to show up. I showed up Thursday night and got registered and stuff, which showing up late Thursday is the way to do it. Because apparently there was like 300 people in line at like 4. But we showed up at like 7 something, and there's like 2 people in line. It was fine.
Nice.
We're able to register, got around that, and then we came in early because you were doing the painting competition.
I sure was. Yeah.
So you came in early Friday, and we got to walk into them setting up the hall while blasting Darude Sandstorm at like a comically high volume across the whole hall. I was like, okay, this is a good place. Like, I'm into it.
Yeah, we walked in and we were like, this can't be our room, and then kept walking, and then we're like, wait, no, this was our room.
I was not expecting it to be the techno room. Yeah, it was great. Everybody was super nice. So we brought lists. We brought stuff to the event, and we should probably go over a little bit about what it is that we decided to take. So LVO was a weird thing, for anybody who doesn't know, where the new scenario packet, which changed a lot of things, and like a massive balance update with points changes, happened not too long before, like it was about a week before the cutoff for rules for LVO. But they decided to push it back push that cutoff back to December so that they could play with the prior rules, which we were a little disappointed about because I was like, I want to play with the new toys, but
yeah, I was more than a little disappointed by this change, by this choice,
especially as not hyper competitive. I kind of get it for people who are like really going for the win, but I was like, I just want to play with the new stuff. But it kind of turned the event into the last big hurrah for Grand Tournament Nephilim, right?
Yeah,
and for better or worse,
boy, did I get to experience Nephilim in all of its pride. Like,
yeah,
boy.
I mean, I got some of it too, but definitely not the worst of it. What did you end up bringing?
So I've been championing the idea that you can take 2 big knights with Chaos Knights and actually do pretty well with it.
The 2 and 7.
Yeah, the 2 and 7, two big, 7 war dogs. I weigh it top 5 at a pretty big GT up here in Washington. I've won multiple RTs with the list. I think it's very good. It's basically like an Abominate kitted out to the teeth to not die, with a Desecrator kitted out to the teeth to kill things, and then 2 Executioner Dreadblades of various things, and then 5 Stalkers, 2 with Chain Cleavers, 3 with Slaughter Claws, and then there's 3 Thermals and 2 Avenger Gatling Cannons in there as well. And basically the list is just like, I shoot you real good and then I melee you even better. And it's got, 35 obsec bodies plus 20 non-obsec bodies, and everything's fast and pretty lethal. And if you don't have enough stuff that handles T7, T8 vehicles, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And Chaos Knights tend to do pretty well with secondaries as well.
The secondaries are fine.
Yeah, especially like Relentless is just...
Yeah, Ruthless Tyranny is an absurd secondary.
It's just very, very good. Grind them down's usually pretty good for you.
Yep.
And then it's usually just kind of like covering something else, which...
It's usually Storm of Darkness. Although that secondary scored very badly for me in the game I lost because I kept dying.
It's not my favorite secondary, just because it takes so long to complete.
Yeah, that's fair. I've liked it in general, but
yeah.
I understand people that don't like it.
Score's good when it finishes, but
yeah.
Mine's a little more fiddly just because it's not knights.
Yep.
Only so many options available to you. I've been playing Word Bearers. I've been playing Word Bearers quite a bit, actually. They kind of took over my brain. I originally got into the Codex for Chaos Marines to play Black Legion and just stomp Abaddon around, but I kind of ended up like playing Word Bearers without Abaddon a lot, and that's sort of just what I've become used to doing. Really fell in love with their tools. And if not all of the tools are necessarily Word Bearers specific, though, because I have a Nurgle Demon Prince with Golax the Decayed, because fuck everything that lives. If it's on the table, I would like it to die, please. And that's his job. He's also very good at anti-Abaddon tech. He's really good into like
the Catans.
Just lots of random crap, right? So many random things. Even just dealing with Feel No Pains can be very, very good. One Word Bear specific thing, though, is he gets to bring Exalted Possession, which I find to be extremely funny on a Demon Prince, because the implication is that he's possessed, but he's a demon. And it gives him the Demonkin keyword, which has no bearing on anything in this list, but I just find it funny that he gets that. But it gives him +1 wound, which one of the nice things about the Demon Prince is he only has 8 wounds, so that +1 doesn't kick him over. Look out, sir. And then it gives him an extra attack, an extra strength that largely isn't relevant. And the big thing, honestly, is just +2 inches of movement, though. He's a move 14 flyer with Golax.
Yeah, that's such a big deal. 14 is so fast.
Just absolutely cuts into things. It's like not quite flyerant, but thinking about it. And then I've got a Master Possession, just super bog standard, Slanesh marked, and Mutant Invigoration and Pact of Flesh. You can imagine what's in the list because he's there. Then I have a Dark Apostle. There may be.
All right.
And I've got a Dark Apostle. The Dark Apostle is also Slanesh marked. The reason for that is the Slanesh mark prayer. I have some extra points, but the Slanesh mark prayer gives advance and charge to a Slanesh unit, and that's one of the issues with the Terminators is they are a little slow. But with that, you can actually you can at least. So it doesn't always make them threat super far, but you can tell your opponent they could threat that far, right? And that often kind of forces them to stay back.
Mental thing where it's like, this is where I could be.
And it's also not wrong, right? It's like, hey, listen, if you move up this much, I could just blow you up. Like I'd have to get a little lucky, but it's there, right? Whereas without the advance and charge, you wouldn't necessarily have that. And then, so one of the really cool things about word bearers, and one of the things I really like about them, is just being able to access the prayer list a little more than other factions can. Usually you're stuck just doing illusory supplication all the time, because it's very, very good. But because I'm able to take the Epistle of Lorgar, I can do 2 prayers. And so what I do here is I take the +1 to wound in melee prayer. I think it's Soul Terror Portents, I believe is what it's called. And what's really cool about that is it lets me actually cheapen the Terminators a little bit, because I don't need to pack them with like Power Fists. Because it lets them, even though they're just strength 5, it lets them bump up to like wounding on 4s against most vehicles, wounding on like 2s and 3s against a lot of random stuff.
Which is very, very good.
Yeah, super good. He is great. He also has a thing called Demonic Whispers, which is a warlord trait, where every time he does a prayer or completes an action, I roll a die. If I roll higher in the current battle round, I get a command point, which is actually remarkably consistent even in the late game.
Because he's doing that 3 times per round, right?
Yeah, I'm generally able to do it 3 times per round, because he gets 2 prayers and then he's usually doing an action.
Nice.
I've got some troops because I have to in Nephilim.
Not for much longer.
Yeah, I have 2 units of 10 cultists who I actually really love. I have never made an attack with them in my life. They stand around screening against deep strikes, and they do great. they do a fantastic job for 50 points. And then I have a unit of legionaries with a Balefire Tome, making one of them a Psyker. The spell that I give them is Diabolic Strength to get +2 attacks. Usually under the Demon Prince, and that pushes him up with the other +1. He makes like 9 attacks, which, like, with only like his 6 attacks that he baseline has before the Warlord trait and everything, he can just kind of bounce off stuff sometimes. But when you're up to 9, it's pretty dumb. it's a lot of attacks.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting on 2s, right? Rerolling everything.
Yeah, he hits on 2s. He rerolls generally because I'm word bearers. You're exploding 6s from round 3 on. He like a lot of the time he wounds 10 or 11 times with his 9 attacks. Yeah, it's pretty good. And they're mostly just kind of holding my backline. They just kind of move up and cast that spell when it's necessary.
Right.
This list has a block of 10 Terminators, Slanesh marked, Black Rune of Damnation. They have 2 Chain Fists and 8 just accursed weapons. The Chain Fists I found just really make vehicles explode, so I think they're pretty worth it.
I think so, yeah.
Whereas, like, so I play into a lot of Iron Hands locally, and so I don't really value the Power Fist very much because I play against a lot of Dreadnoughts. And
yeah, that's fair.
Being -1 damage, I'm like, well, I sure wish I just had more attacks, like,
right?
And not -1 to hit, even with my rerolls. Got the Terminators. I have 2 units of 5 possessed. One of the possessed units has an icon. This is for doing the Word Bearers Exalted Art God secondary. You need an icon to do it. Possessed can do that. On every scenario, especially with player place terrain, where you can give them a hiding spot right at the front. They can move up and do that action on the first turn, like top of the first turn. So just having 1 unit with an icon just gives me that option available to me. I have 2 units of Warp Talons. I usually do behind enemy lines. Typically how that works is that round 1, I move stuff up. Round 2, you drop in the Warp Talons. Round 3, like, 1 Warp Talon unit's often still alive, and like a unit of Possessed are often getting into deployments, or like the Demon Prince.
Yeah.
So stuff just, like, I don't need a lot of Deep Strikers. I'd kind of like to put a 3rd unit of Warp Talons in, but it's just because Warp Talons and Word Bearers are really good. But
they are, yeah.
They're just super murdery. They're just so consistent. But yeah, so I often, typically I'm doing like Exalted Art Gods behind enemy lines, and then the Long War, because Long War is pretty decent until it isn't. I got a unit of Havocs, all with las cannons. They're Slanesh marked. I don't really like this unit, but I kind of just needed some long range anti-tank shooting, and they've had moments, but they're really inconsistent. And then a pair of Undivided Hellbrutes with multi-meltas and Power Scourges, which I think are super underrated.
Yeah, I was going to say those have been like mainstay for you, and you were really impressed with them.
I really like them. They're a little inconsistent, but when they're good, they're like very good. And they just got cheaper in arcs, so I'm doing great. I think that's everything. I believe anyway. So the Las Vegas Open is played over 6 rounds, kind of. You play out 6 rounds. It's 3 rounds each day, Friday and Saturday, and then on Sunday they cut down to a top 8. They'll also on Saturday night do a shadow round if they need to try to get to 8 undefeated.
Spoilers, they had to do that.
Yeah, they had to do that, which honestly impressive that they were able to, because it's just so many people. But that means we're not really playing Sunday. It's just 6 rounds, and more spoilers. We only played 5 of them. Yep. I had 99% sure it was COVID in like the whole month leading up to LVO, and I was just very tired. And when I dropped, Jaden was like, "Cool, I guess I'll do that too." And we went and ate dinner. So yeah. Anyway, that's the end. But let's go to the beginning. First round, I brought up the player packet so that I could remember that we played Recover the Relics.
We did, in fact.
Which we were kind of laughing the moment we saw the sheet. We were like, "Why is day one like this?"
Yeah, day one is just bad scenarios.
What's funny is that my hatred for Data Scry Salvage comes entirely from playing Knights. Like, I play it just fine with Chaos Marine. I have like no real problems with that scenario. It's just my brain hates it. Like,
yeah,
I'm just like actually the thing I hate about it is I hate how it's measured out.
Yes. Oh man,
I laugh that this is the trigonometry one, but
it doesn't even work with the trigonometry. It's all like
I know
0.73 of inches. It's bad.
But we played Recover the Relics, which I like well enough, but it's for specifically my list. This is a bad one for me, because this is, I believe I've gone through it, one of the only 2, the other being Data Scry Salvage. There's only 2 scenarios that my Exalt the Dark Gods action is kind of bad on.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing anywhere near the middle.
Yep.
So I don't have any particular desire to be there. So we got Recover the Relics. What did you end up dropping into round 1?
So I got paired into a lovely man named John from England.
So spoilers, I don't have any of my opponents' names. I don't remember.
I wrote them down and took pictures. Anyway,
I'm bad at that kind of thing.
So I was playing into Deathwing, and he had, no joke, 30 Terminators, I think, on the table.
That's many.
Yeah. Hold on, I'm counting. 20, 22, 24, 26. Yeah, 30. 30 Terminators. Nope, 36 Terminators of various kinds. Just casually. No, I must have been 30. Oh, those aren't Terminators. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So this is Deathwing. All of the Terminators have Transhuman, which is a really big problem when my entire army is like, "Oh, you're T4. I wouldn't you on 2s." So that was like
with Knights, you need every attack to be as consistent as possible, right? And just
this is what I'm seeing. He also has the special Deathwing Crusader Knight Boys, which hit like absolute freight trains.
Yeah.
So we were playing. We had 4 of these non-obscuring but scalable, but not like wall things that were like 3 or 4 inches tall, 3 wide, 3 deep, 3 down on the other side.
Yeah.
This ended up being actually very good for me because the big knights could just see over them all the time.
And they weren't that tall.
War dogs could do that usually too. They could see over 1 easily, seeing over 2 sometimes. So I ended up going second, I believe, in this particular game. And he moved up and did... Yeah, I went second because his turn 1 took 45 seconds. He walked his units up and he said, "Go." Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, all right, this will be short." And there's a couple important moments in the game. The first one is I forgot to zone out his deep striking double squad of death. Because I got too excited to shoot like half of his army off the table, which I almost managed to do. And then he made all of his dread tests and all of his 7-inch charges and killed 2 war dogs with his elite unit of dudes in the back. And I thought the game was over. However, I looked at the board and I went, okay, so here's the deal. He's got this one objective that's worth like 5 points around to him by the end of the game because it's special to him. It's the Deathwing. Like, I control this. I get cumulative points.
Yeah.
So my plan was this. The Abominant's going to walk into all of his 20-odd Terminators that are left, survive for 2 rounds, and just walk over and take it away from him. Because I'm in Darkness for round 2. I'm going to go back to Doom round 3, and I'm going to go into Dread round 4 and strip all the OBSEC off of his stuff.
Yep.
This proceeded to work beautifully. The Abominant just sort of walked up, and I was like, all right, I'm saving 2 CPs every round to do nothing but give him -1 damage. And I was able to clean up his elite dudes in the back line with Executioner shooting, which was key in this matchup. Plus the Desecrator just charging stuff and sweeping a million times.
Executioners are so good.
Executioners are MVPs, yeah. I think my one Executioner killed almost 300 wounds of models across all my 5 games. It was... Yep. Anyway, so my Abominant just marched up the table and then killed some stuff, but mostly just walked into the other zone and was like, I am 10 wounds and you don't have any OBSEC. And he basically had to throw his entire army at it and still failed to kill it. So I got to table him and win pretty handily, like, 88 to 60.
This is the dark secret about Abominants, right? Like, we see this in Chaos Knight discussions. People just don't like this model.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, well, it doesn't kill a bunch of stuff. I'm like, that's not really the point.
You're right.
Like, it just has to kill 10 wounds of stuff. That's all it ever needs to do. Right? Yeah. And as soon as it's done that, it is now just a big ridiculous, and it's like, it's not like it doesn't do anything in melee. Like it makes a lot of attacks. And it just won't die now. And if it's in your army, like, especially, spoiler, like I played Chaos Knights as well, and Jaden and I did a lot of our early dojoing of this faction together. And just having him up there with like Aura of Terror, making the dread tests like really gnarly. Yeah. And you can be like, oh, I'll ignore it. And it's like, oh, make a dread test. Nope, you have to shoot me.
Yeah, and actually that happened a few times this game. I had like 1 or 2 wound war dogs left, and he'd be like, all right, I'm gonna shoot that. I'm like, I need you to make a dread test. And he's like, no.
yeah, 3
and I was lowest,
like
yeah.
Even on like leadership 9 stuff, it goes down to like 8 and you roll 9.
Well, 9 is average on 3d6 drop the lowest.
Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, as War Machine players,
we know this.
The Abominant has just, like, for both of us, it's always just been this anchor, right, to games.
And like, I'm not joking. If I did not execute that particular plan and I didn't have access to a model that durable with the Feel No Pain and the everything,
I just explode, right?
Like, yeah, I think I would have lost this game.
Yeah, everything just explodes. Yeah,
and instead I won by 24 points, which it was good. Very nice. John even, like, after the game, he commented, he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we both thought that the game was over on bottom of or top of 2 when I killed the 2 war dogs and like half killed the other one. I was like, yeah, and then he's like, but then you just like played the mission and I had to stop doing what I was doing. I was like, yeah.
I mean, that's the thing about the 2 and 7 build, right? Is that the war dogs are so valuable.
Yeah.
When you have that few of them. Randomly losing a couple that you don't expect to is just very bad.
I did manage to not lose a single one after that, though, which
very nice.
Helped. Yeah.
Nice. Round 1, I went into Grey Knights, which I have some experience against. So that I said I play against Iron Hands a lot, but that player plays Grey Knights occasionally, and actually played them quite a bit a while back. So this guy had, it's fairly typical of what I've generally seen for Grey Knights, where you had basically a pair of Dread Knights. You had the character one. I don't actually know his name. I just know he teleports if you shoot at him.
The Grandmaster, I think.
Something like that. Obviously, like Drago, and a bunch of the very speedy boys whose names I don't remember. And so we both picked behind enemy lines, which was very funny, because we had a very hard time scoring on it, like at all. But I was able to deploy my stuff out pretty well hidden. He got first turn, moves up, starts doing his action and stuff like that, fairly typical. I moved up, and I was kind of going for a bit of threat saturation because he is faster than me. with the kind of jump pack Grey Knight guys. I cannot remember their name. He's faster than me, and the thing when you're both kind of a melee army and one is faster, the slower one just has to run at them, right? Like you have to just
Yes.
get board space. There's nothing else you can really. This comes up another time during the tournament as well. It was just like I just have to move up the field and I have to get as much board presence as I can and kind of saturate as many threats as possible to try to get him to come into me. And so I ended up getting my like I didn't pick Exalted Dark Gods. I honestly don't remember exactly which secondaries. I know I picked the Long War, but it didn't really work out super well. This is a pretty low scoring game in general.
Mm-hmm.
But I moved my Possessed up. I lost one unit, but the other unit rolled pretty well, and only like 2 of them died. And
Nice.
my opponent had never really played against Chaos Space Marines, so he wasn't aware of the melee profile of Possessed, which just reads kill Space Marines real good.
Yeah, it does that.
So they just kind of like blew up that unit that came in on me. From there, I was able to like heal members of that unit and just got very, very aggressive. I largely ignored the Knights, actually. I was like, okay, I'm just never going to shoot at Teleporty Guy because it's like the apocalypse if I do. So I just won't. I'll just pretend he doesn't exist. And he kind of used all 3 of them to like force one side of it. Like he kind of moved them all like along a flank. And this hero Hellbrute, just absolute beast. So I peek it out a little bit, and he shoots at it with one of the Knights and leaves it on like 1. And I use the stratagem to shoot back, and I do 7 damage to it with the multi-melta.
Like you do.
And then I think I shot at it. Yeah, he just activates and shoots it again and just like kills it. And proceeded, which caused him to be unable to reach my objective. Like this Hellbrute just like held this zone for just multiple rounds with like Dread Knights just rolling in on him. And he's just beast moding it. He's like, I'm just threatening you with a multi-melt. Like, I will overwatch you. You may just kind of explode if I get very lucky. Like, it's just, or you're just going to take a ton of damage. And like, you might even kind of bounce off it because Hellbrutes just randomly live through bizarre shit sometimes.
They do.
And so, yeah, this one Hellbrute just held like a whole quarter of the table, like an absolute boss. Mm-hmm. And it was mostly because he had one of those big walls you mentioned. I had them on mine as well. And he was able to just kind of hang out behind one. So the Knights kind of had to come into him like one at a time because they were sort of full.
Right. Yeah.
And so he just like, he was just fighting them one after another. It was great. Sadly, he did die eventually, but it was so long that I ended up scoring a lot more than I should have. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, I basically have the Terminators, the Demon Prince, the remaining Possessed, just my army. Intensely threatening his one of his other objectives, while the Warp Talons came in and they were able to get a charge off on one of his other objectives and did a whole bunch of damage. And I was able to get them into behind enemy lines and stuff like it, start scoring that. And we I think it was top of 5 we stopped to do a points check, and he was ahead by 2 at that point, and we were like, I guess we gotta finish this out and see what's gonna happen. But this is where the advantage of going second came in pretty hard. He teleported Drago into my back line, and he ended up taking my home objective actually, but then I took his home objective with my Demon Prince. And was able to just get to where I'm like, okay, I have enough to score max at the end. I got a few more points on secondaries, and I ended up winning by, I think it was like 1 point. It was,
it was 1 point.
Incredibly tight.
Yep.
82 to 81. Yeah, I found it. So we ended up getting more points than we expected across everything, but it was a real slog and super fun game, super nice guy. I love the way his Dread Knights had a really great conversion.
Oh yeah, those things
made them look just absurdly better than Dread Knights usually do. And it was very cool. And then we had lunch, which we ran around wildly with our heads cut off for a while trying to find food, and then eventually basically ate like a pretzel. And
had a pretzel.
It was great. And then we kicked into tear down their icons, which was the second.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. What did you end up hitting on round 2?
So I got dropped into Tyler with Kraken Nids with 3 units of Neurothropes and all of the Spore Mine nonsense.
Yep.
I'm not going to go super into detail in this game. Basically, the Spore Mines did a really good job of zoning me out, and this was one of the ones where we were mandated to put some terrain in places.
Yeah.
And he was able to just use that to sort of like funnel my knights. And basically he denied me scoring Storm of Darkness every single round by just shooting every single gun in his army that ignored line of sight at whatever was trying to make the action happen.
Yeah.
But there were a few key moments that were like kind of just encapsulated the game as a whole. Like I needed his Neurothropes to make 50% of their saves to kill the units because he was like poking one out of the ruins so that I could shoot at it but not get the whole unit. I needed him to fail half of his saves and I'd kill like 2 in a round repeatedly, and he'd make like 75% of his saves and I'd kill one of them, and then I couldn't shoot the other 2. So he got like multiple rounds of Neurothropes off. The other like key thing that happened is his Flyrant came into the middle to kill a War Dog because he really needed to even up the primary score because I was ahead. And then I charged it with a Desecrator and the War Dog with Helm of Dogs and didn't kill it. And even though it was already like close to half dead, it had 8 wounds, I think, left. And yeah, that was just kind of the game.
The weird things that happen with a 4-up invuln, right? Like it just causes bizarre stuff to occur sometimes. You're like, oh, I guess I just live.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay.
Yep. Anyway, well, and it wasn't even that. Like I charged the War Dog in. He's wounding the thing on 3s. He's got 6 attacks. He hits them all because I give him a million twos. And I rolled 2, 2, 2, 2, 1.
Yeah, you're like, oh.
And I was like, oh, good. And then the Desecrator did something real similar, and I was like, well, all right, this is obnoxious,
gnarly.
So yeah, and it ended up being I lost by like 20, but I feel like if either of those things had changed, I probably am doing a lot better for myself.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I don't know. Yeah, not super interesting to go into. That list doesn't exist anymore. So
yes, that is true. Well, I also got Tyranids.
Yes, you did.
It was also Kraken Tyranids.
Yes, it was.
This guy was running a he had a double Hive Tyrant thing going on where he had both the Reapers of Blitterax and the Maw-Claws of Thyrax, which I think is dope.
It is pretty cool
way to do it. He also had a Spore Assist and Biovores and oh god, Spore Mines. Why? Yeah, those are silly. And while I am a little sad that they just got nerfed into Oblivion, I'm not that sad.
I'm not sad at all. Those things are stupid. Now,
it
is
like
worth
the
noting
concept, but
yeah, it is worth noting that your list is much better at this because your entire army is a 5 campaign. But
yeah, well,
actually, I was just going to say, like, the thing I think about spores is that they could have kept them free, but maybe just changed them to only 1 mortal wound, and you can't move them.
Yeah, so you place them and they're actually mines.
Yeah, I think that would have been. I think that would have been way better. But anyway, continue.
Anyhow, yeah. So I ended up going second here, which I did not want. I really wanted to be able to get upfield, but he didn't move up too much. He played very defensively, which is kind of fair because his stuff is very quick. This whole deal was he had the 2 Flyrants, he had the Spore Assist Biovores, he had, I believe, 2 sets of 3 of the Smite Thropes, Zone Thropes. I always mix them all up. One of the HQ one, and then it was a bunch of the Hive Guard and Ravagers and small unit of Warriors. Bunch of stuff and some gargoyles. But because he stayed back so much, I was able to complete my Exalted Art Gods in the first turn. I kind of just moved up and was like my middle of the table, which is kind of what my entire list is designed around doing.
Yeah.
One of the things about the Terminators I mentioned, like they're not super quick. I think people maybe over exaggerate how slow they are, but they are not super fast. And a lot of the time with how incredibly tanky that unit is, they'll often kind of get ignored, right? And people just be like, well, they just play around them, right? So one of the things I like about Word Bearers is that Exalted Art God's action is basically me going, you must come fight my Terminators or I will get all these points.
Right.
And it works out pretty well, and especially if I'm able to do it turn 1, then by round 4, I can send them out to do whatever they want. and
Right.
they suddenly kind of unlock and can just run around doing whatever. Yeah. So I was able to get that off for the first turn. I kind of just moved up, got my buffs up, moved some possessed around. The possessed, one of my possessed units just utterly exploded to the Maw-Claw Tyrant because it's hard to do anything else about that. My like Master of Executions also got exploded by the Maw-Claw Tyrant. It's just bad. It's the thing is like I don't have a great way to respond to the Flyrants doing the thing they do.
No.
My only real response is the Demon Prince, but because he has two of them, because that's just trading the Demon Prince straight up. Because he has two of them, it's a little hard to do a whole lot about. But I was able to. Okay. So I'm going to explain how badly this turn went. This is one of the worst fight phases I've ever seen in my life. And it was a combination of like, I think he made a couple of mistakes. They weren't necessarily huge mistakes, but it got compounded by the dice like imploding on him. So eventually I was basically like, okay, I can't deal with these tyrants. I need to just delete one. And so the Demon Prince just zooms up and kills I believe it was the Obliterax one. Because they were both fairly close by. And so I'm like, okay, that one's gone. I'm trading the Demon Prince straight up. And the Demon, he'd even like taken a bit of damage from something. I don't remember what. So his response, and I figured he's like, yeah, he'll just kill my Demon Prince with the Tyrant. But I think he got like a little greedy. He's like, I think I can kill the Demon Prince with other things and use the Tyrant to kill something else. And like, I think he just wanted to get more out of it, which I think is fair, but a little dangerous, especially with how strong the Demon Prince is.
Yeah.
So he charged like Ravagers into Warp Talons that had come down. He charged... he moved the Tyrant up and had it go into one of my Hellbrutes, and he had a unit of the Hive Guard or the Tyrant Guard, I never remember the name, go to deal with the Demon Prince. And then he had the Venom Thropes. He had Venom Thropes in there. They went to go fight another unit of Warp Talons, and the mistake he made here was which unit he picked first. He decided to have the Venom Thropes try to kill the Warp Talons first. And his idea was like the Hellbrute's not going to kill the Hive Tyrant. The Hive Tyrant had like the 5-up Feel No Pain up as well. I should note that my Demon Prince, one of the little bits of tech in this list is the Demon Prince has Death Hex, the spell to remove invulnerable saves. Normally, this is a very inconsistent spell on a Demon Prince. It's good, but it's inconsistent because it casts on an 8. But in Word Bearers, I can fail it and then force it out with a stratagem. By making it bump up to its minimum cast value. And taking a mortal wound, which is part of the damage that the Demon Prince had taken. Anyway, he had the Venom Thropes going, and the Venom Thropes killed like 2 or 3 of the Warp Talons, I think. And then I was like, I agree, the Hellbrute's not going to do anything to the Hive Tyrant. I'm going to interrupt with the Demon Prince, and the Demon Prince just killed the whole unit that was going to fight him.
That's probably expected, to be honest.
It was obscenely easy for him. But the problem is basically like now I just got away with murder, basically, because the Demon Prince is going to still be alive, and he's like up in the middle of his army with his 14-inch. So it's just he can just pick anything in the army and kill it at this point. Then the Hive Tyrant. But then the Hive Tyrant goes into the Hellbrute and does not kill it. Leaves it on like 2. He rolled kind of bad, and then I have the -1 damage. And he leaves it on like 2, and then the Hellbrute goes absolutely ballistic on him with his Power Scourge, I should know. It's not like he has like a hammer or a claw. This is his Power Scourge. It's like an infantry blending weapon. Proceeds to put 12 damage into the Flyrant with that, like straight up failed saves, took 12 damage. The only reason he lived was the 5-up Feel No Pain. So he lives with like 3 health or something like that. 3 or 4. And the game was over. Like, just completely over at that point. I'm able to clean up the Hive Tyrant. The Demon Prince is now just jumping from unit to unit, killing whatever he wants, because like I think I jumped into the Smite unit and just like killed most of a unit. He rolled kind of good on some things, but
yeah.
And like he tied that down. He's doing whatever he wants. The Terminators are coming out and starting to blast into stuff. Like basically he had two objectives I couldn't really do anything about, because one of them just I couldn't really interact with because of its positioning. The other was his home objective, which just had like a million things on it.
Right.
But it was like, okay, you can have those two, and then I just had the rest of the table to do whatever I wanted and just scored whatever. So he just had this very bad turn compounded by like one bad decision. But I ended up winning 92-71 on that one.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was good. The Demon Prince, boy, he was good this whole event. He was just, there was like one game he wasn't good, and it's
because you got that sweet conversion.
Yeah, it's because I built him. So we kicked into the last round for the day, which was Data Scry Salvage, everybody's favorite scenario.
Yep.
This is another one that's not great for me because I really want to get in the middle of the table, and this one does not like me getting in the middle of the table.
Yep. And I'm playing Knights.
Yep.
So I got to play into Sebastian, who was rocking another Tyranids list. This time it was Leviathan. He had 7 Carnifexes with heavy venom cannons.
Heavy las cannons.
Yeah, no. He also had a Harpy, which is, I believe, what the big flying thing is called.
Yeah, the big flying guy with the venom cannons. Yeah,
and then like a fly rent and a bunch of support nonsense. I got to go first, which was big actually, because I got to put things on 3 of the central objectives, and then I had a War Dog that couldn't get in range anyway because he hit all of his things behind a really like
getting to actually pull off the Data Scry Salvage action with Knights. You're like, woo!
So I got to do it twice.
Yeah, nice.
Anyway, basically I got to like swarm the objectives, and he got to never touch the objectives until like round 3.
Yeah.
And like at the end so there were a couple of really important things that happened. One, the Abominant sat in front of 4 Carnifexes and made all of them fail their dread tests, and then all of them failed their charges. This is the same turn that he made them all shoot at him instead of shooting at my vulnerable and nearly dead War Dogs from the previous turn. So the Abominant was like, what if half your list does nothing but shoot me this turn? And then the Abominant lived on 1 wound for 2 rounds.
My God, Carnifexes are leadership 6.
Yes, so they were leadership
so
5.
Bad.
Rolling 3d6
drop lows.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So that's a funny thing about the Tyranids Knight matchup, and we've talked about this before, that a lot of Tyranids stuff, its leadership is kind of designed around like not doing morale very often.
Mm-hmm.
So they tend to have kind of bad leadership stats. And so into Knights, they can like, I think the army is pretty strong into Knights a lot of the time. But if the dread tests come in hot, like it can just end the game.
Yeah. And it kind of did.
Yeah.
And basically what ended up happening is like he eventually started to catch up on scenario, but by then it was like round 4 or 5. And I forced him to score 0 for like 2 turns. And that was just kind of the game. Like he killed almost everything, but I also killed almost everything of his. And at the end of the game, I won like, I don't have the score in front of me, but it was like close to 90 to about 40 something.
Yeah, pretty brutal.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. But you know, he was a super nice guy. He was trying out a list that was, quote, designed to be just annoying, and boy was it. It was just like, I
mean, like, yeah, you're rolling with that many Carnifexes, you're an awesome dude as far as I'm concerned. Like,
yeah, 100%.
Everybody wants to play the Carnifex spam, and you got to
I want to play the Carnifex.
Yeah, it's dope. Carnifexes are cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this round I got Harlequins, and I played against Harlequins with Knights a long time ago, like before the Codex.
Yep.
And I found it to be kind of a weird matchup, but this is like now Harlequins have changed many times since then, and they've changed again since this. So this matchup's terrible.
Yes, it is.
This matchup's horrific. I had no idea. This was unplayable. Just straight up. So this is about what you expect. It's just 9 Star Weavers, or I don't know, a lot of them. I don't remember exactly how many. All
Usually
full of
6.
troops. The gnarly character that like always wounds on 2s. So
the Twilight
Black
Trooper.
Rune is meaningless.
Troop
Yeah.
Master. Or it might not even be the Twilight Troop Master.
It's
a Troop
just
Master.
a Troop Master, yeah.
With a relic, yeah.
A couple of the characters, a couple of the bikes, but like the bikes were irrelevant. Basically the problem is that Chaos Space Marines do not play the OBSEC game well at all unless you bring very specific tools. You have to be playing, and it's basically, are you playing Black Legion? That's like the only, and like I guess Iron Warriors can give some stuff OBSEC, but like it's not a thing the faction is very good at, except for very specifically Black Legion. And you know who's real good at OBSEC nonsense is Harlequins. Yeah. So the issue I ran into was he could basically just fly at me, like with just head empty, like fly directly at me. And this isn't saying this guy was a very good player. Like it was clear to me he knew what he was doing, but it was very like he just flies directly at me, makes all of his shots, which did more damage than I expected. Because again, I haven't really played against this. And then I end up in this spot where I'm like, okay, I can kill the vehicles, but then a troop just pops out and steals the objective from me.
Yep.
But if I don't kill the vehicles,
then a troop pops out.
then I keep the objective, but he has more guns and a troop pops out and kills me anyway, and like takes the objective from me anyway. So like I just end up in a complete lose-lose. And even on top of that, my dice were horrific. Like I couldn't kill the Star Weavers with like literally like full charging units of Terminators and stuff. Like it was just nothing was happening.
That's kind of the thing about our Star Weavers is sometimes they'll just absorb an entire army.
Just having that 4-up invuln, right? Like they just,
and the -1 to hit, no rerolls.
Well, so that's the other thing too. Word bearers, I'm like all about rerolling hits, and they're like, nope.
What if you didn't?
What if you just didn't? I'm like, oh, okay. So, and he's not really doing mortal wounds either. So I was just like, I guess I'm just like generic Chaos Marines today. Like I just don't have a faction benefit of any kind. Yeah. It was just bad. I did end up like, I was able to finagle some points. Like it could have been a whole lot worse, but it did end 97-48 with me. I just couldn't interact with his army meaningfully. I think even with the Harlequin nerfs, it's still pretty rough. Like I just don't. Yeah,
I don't think the way that the Harlequins got nerfed actually changes the way that matchup plays out in the slightest.
Not a whole lot. Like I can kill more of his stuff a little more quickly.
Right.
It doesn't really, because the issue is I don't have the activation economy. Right. Because you need to have an activation to kill a Star Weaver, and then you need a separate activation to kill the troop inside. Yeah. And I kind of have the tools for either kind of unit, but I can't do it consistently over multiple activations. Right. And so, yeah, it's just, and like some of my ways of quickly killing the Star Weavers are like 2 heavy shots out of a multi-melta, right? And you're like, well, he just saved both.
Does not work.
So
yeah.
Like, I mean, if he fails 1, he just explodes, but if he's in close range a lot of the time. But like, but even then sometimes he doesn't, right? I need a 4 on the die at least.
So you need a 50% chance. So you have like multiple 50% failure gates, and that ends up like your odds of killing it end up being like 3% or something.
Yeah, I don't have, like, I feel like in the Harlequins you kind of need like the right guns to.
They're called executioners.
Right, but I just mean like, yeah, right, like, and that's the thing, like Knights you kind of, and especially with the addition, I mean, since I had played, because obviously executioners existed when I in like pre-codex when I had played against the Harlequins the one time, but also like access to things like the chain cannons and stuff like that for just like cleaning up troops and stuff like that. You know, those wound on 2s
do.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Whereas I just don't have the right kinds of like shooting. I'm like all melee, and the problem with melee is it means the troops can do whatever they want, right? Because they just I kill the vehicle and they just pop out and run around.
And they're so fast. They're way faster than you are.
Yeah, and they just like move through whatever the hell they want. So that's the other thing. My characters just die, like just all of them. Like these just Master Possession, Dark Apostle, just getting charged by stuff. There's just no stopping it, really.
Nope.
Yeah.
Sure can't.
So, yep. Yeah, it was a really, really rough game, but opponent was super nice, and he kind of like, it's clear he like, similar to me, like he thinks about competitive play a lot, so we got to sit and kind of chat about like
That's nice.
what might be going on with Chaos Marines going forward. So it's cool. But that was the last round of the day.
Yeah.
And we got to go goof around for a little bit. We played Terra Mystica and went to bed.
Because we're old.
We're all older than we were many years ago. Yeah, the old days of LVO being up to like 4 a.m. I think we were in bed by like 10:30, like every night. Day 2, I like the scenarios a lot more.
Same.
Round 4, we got Abandoned Sanctuaries.
Yeah. So I was playing another Tyler. Who had Creations of Bile. And the only difference between this Creations of Bile and the Creations of Bile that everybody plays is that he didn't have a Demon Prince, he had a Lord Discordant, which is actually very good enemy. So we deployed. So here's the thing. Creations of Bile is the only thing that I lost to in the GT that I took this list to and placed top 5. And I learned a lot from that game. And that game was very close, even with some things overlooked at the time. And so I learned some stuff and I applied it really hard in this matchup. And also just things just kind of went my way. So I got to go first. He had some things hiding in a ruin, but they were in the ruin and there was a grate at the top of the ruin and I could see through the ruin. So turn 1, I got to kill enough stuff to unlock the Abominous Blessing and also score grind and also start a Storm of Darkness in the middle of the table with a dog that I was pretty sure wasn't going to die. He didn't do anything on his turn 1. He I think he charged a War Dog with a unit of Possessed, and I used the -1 damage stratagem and then killed most of them back.
That makes the Possessed so sad. They should do good, like decent damage to a War Dog, and then they just don't.
I think he did like 3 or 4.
Yeah, with the -1, it's
so the next couple of turns, or the next turn, I killed a bunch of stuff, and then he moves his Lord Discordant up. He charges an Executioner with it, and this is one of those catastrophic combat things that just doesn't work. He had 2 Possessed into a War Dog. I didn't use the -1 damage stratagem. They only wounded it twice because they're winning on 5s and 6s. So that was pretty average. He charges another War Dog with 4 Possessed. I opted not to use the -1 damage stratagem because I'm saving it for this last one I'll mention. And they didn't kill it. He failed his Dread test with his Terminators because they were within range of the Abominant, and then failed the charge in the center of the table. So they're not even on the objective, and I still have that. And then his Discordant charges into my Executioner, and this is a Discordant with the Undivided relic, so it does mortal wounds.
Does the mortal wound bomb? Yeah.
Leaves it on 1 because of the -1 damage stratagem, and then consolidates into my Helm of Dog Stalker, who promptly kills it.
Yeah.
So then he has to bring out Abaddon, and Abaddon does kill stuff, but I explode into him for mortals, leaving him on 7, and then I use the Herpatrack stratagem to do another one, sneak it in there. And then I shoot him down, and then I walk up to him with the Desecrator, and he's like, well, are you going to charge me? I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to spend these 2 CPs to give myself +1 to hit, and he is crushed like vermin. And if I roll 2 hits here, you take 4 mortal wounds on 2s. And he's like, wait, what? Yeah, so I explained the stratagem to him.
Much better way to get damage through.
Oh, it's so good. It comes up again later. So this is the pair of stratagems. Crush like vermin gives you -1 to hit, and you have to attack with your feet, which you normally suck because they're strength 8, AP nothing, damage 2. But what it does instead is if you hit a thing that's not a vehicle or a monster, you just get to do 2 mortal wounds in your attack ends. It gives you -1 to hit, but I have a +1 hit stratagem for 1 CP because I'm playing Iconoclast, and I have rerolls to 1s because I have the Diabolus Warlord trait on the thing. So it's 6 attacks hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and if 2 of them hit, Abaddon just melts. Some Abaddon melts. And then he keeps failing Dread tests with his Terminators. So I've got 2 War Dogs on 1 on the back line of my zones, and he can't get his models far enough away from the Abominant, so he just shoots the Abominant with his whole army. And then he fails the charge because of the Dread test. And at the end of the game, it was... So I actually... I didn't take Storm of Darkness. I took a killing one. And at the end of that game, I scored 99 points, which is the max I could score, and he scored 51.
Yeah.
And it was just Yeah, it was just the apocalypse, basically.
Yeah.
I got everything I wanted. I played the matchup really well, and I was just able to like control the game from turn one because he's so much slower than I am, and dread tests are really bad when the Abominant already has his favor unlocked.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So first off, I really like Abandoned Sanctuaries with my list. It's probably it may be the best scenario for my list.
It is the best scenario for your list, yeah.
I think there's one other that is pretty good, but I can't remember what it is. Death and Seal, I think, is pretty good.
Death and Seal is really good for you too.
But so I had that going for me. Then I drop into Thousand Suns, which is like my original 40k army, so I actually know what they do pretty well. That said, I haven't really played them since Flamers became a thing. And so his list had like a block of 10 Scarab Terminators, a block of 5 Scarab Terminators, a handful of rubrics, I think like 4 units, I think, something like that. I think it's 4. He had Ahriman, he had an Infernal Master, and then he had I'm trying to remember the exact. He had like 3 units of Flamers that were like 4 to 5 models each. I don't remember exactly how many, but roughly that. And then a Flux Master, the caster on disc, to be able to buff them. And so I was like, okay, I know some tricks for dealing with the Flamers, but they are going to be a pain in the ass. Like, there's just not really any getting around that. That said, the other thing is that, oddly enough, one of the things I really like about Chaos Marines into Demons is actually how many bolters I have on my Terminators. Demons really
it's
don't
actually
like
really strong.
Just regular ass bolters, like especially like combi bolters, because this is a weapon that's entirely designed around not having any AP anyway, so it's just sheer volume of attacks into whatever your demon save is. And so even against a 3-up, it puts damage through, just because it's a lot of attacks. He was obviously playing in Cult of Duplicity, which is just, if you're playing in a tournament, that's probably what you should be playing. So I kind of looked at his list and I was like, all right, his list wants to take the middle of the table and be a nightmare. My list also wants to take the middle of the table and be a nightmare. Like, that's what we're doing. The thing is, though, 1, I got there first, and 2, I'm way better at it.
Yes,
especially a big thing is that into T-Suns, obviously having a 5-up feel no pain against mortal wounds on your entire army, very good. It just, like, he doom bolted me every round, and I took 1 damage from it every time, which is a 3 damage spell normally. So it just shaves off a ton of output, just losing a third of your mortal wounds like that. The other thing is I have a lot of weird tools for dealing with the buffs that he puts on Terminators. So he had his big block of 10 Terminators. He can give -1 to hit, while I can give Terminators +1 to hit for 1 CP. He can give them like a 4-up invulnerable save. Literally none of my AP gets that high anyway. So I'm like, except for the multi-meltas. It's literally the only things with enough AP to matter. Which I'm not firing the multi-meltas into the Terminators if I can help it. That said, they didn't really have better targets. No. I was shooting Flamers with multi-meltas, so that's not better. But anyway, so like a lot of the buffs he has on them, and then like the debuffs I have, like Illusory Supplication and like 5-up Feel No Pain, including in melee, and bringing a guy back every turn and things like that. He has no answer to any of that except for like denying my spells, which Thousand Suns are not uniquely good at denying spells outside of like one stratagem. So I moved up, I took the middle and was like, this is mine now. I had the Possessed move up and do the action in the first turn. And the thing is, his army didn't really have that much, like, I don't know. He wanted to stay back a little bit. And my Possessed ended up getting untouched. They did not get attacked at all. The reason that this was a problem was that if they're already in the middle of the table, they have a 9-inch walk and can charge from there. And he left it open to charge into his home objective on top of 2. And I was able to fully clear his home objective with Possessed and take it top of 2, just in the middle of his army. The Flamers are coming up and attacking my Terminators, and obviously the auto hit very good against Illusory Supplication. But for one, he kept failing to get the +1 to wound spell off. Like, it just kept not working. The other thing is actually the Black Rune of Damnation kept a lot of his army back. Because the other thing that a lot of people forget about the Black Rune is it gives you an 18-inch aura of doubles cause perils. And so a lot of his stuff was just hanging back, and I ended up doing a considerable amount of damage to his army with Black Rune. I think it probably put 12 plus mortal wounds into his army. It was carving like sorcerers in Terminator units. It was like doing damage to the Flux Masters, doing damage to Ahriman. It was just absolutely wrecking everybody. I was able to kind of whittle the flamers down to basically what I did is I got one flamer unit down to 2 models with guns, and then charged it. And I was like, "Do you want to Overwatch with 2 flamers?" And he's like, "Not really." And so I charged 2 flamers and then piled in so that I caught another unit of flamers in melee. Yeah,
this is the
so
way.
I was basically like, okay, I don't like. I'm not going to fight those, but I don't have to deal with them for a turn. Finish off that unit of flamers. I'm able to just kind of surge forward, honestly. Like, he didn't really and I was able to fully, like, he wanted to get into my backline he did retrieve Nephilim data. But I was screening with the cultists, and there's just a big dumb line of cultists in the back, which he got through eventually, but it was so long that he only got 3 ticks of Nephilim data. I had a Hellbrute and the units of Warp Talent. Like, he just didn't have really anything on one part of the table, so the Warp Talons were able to just come in, charge in, start getting behind enemy lines, and kind of be unmolested back there for quite a while. And then, like, the Demon Prince is on his home objective, killing Ahriman, and, like, he did kind of do a thing where he blobbed in the middle of the table with a ton of flamers and the Flux Master, and was, like, trying to kind of set up and do Warp Ritual. Like, eventually I had just left the middle, and so he kind of jumped in to try to take it. And I was already pretty ahead at this point, but it was basically like, hey, I'm just going to finish out this turn to try to get 3 points on the Long War. And I was able to basically use Lookout Sir to not let the Flamers Overwatch me. And have the Demon Prince charge both remaining units of Flamers, so he couldn't Overwatch. So it was the Demon Prince and an entire unit of Terminators in melee with Flamers with their 6-up save. They disappeared instantly. Yeah, it was. I kind of like. I knew his army fairly well just because I played them quite a bit. He didn't know my army as well, and then I was able to kind of use some tricks in that particular matchup to just make it. It was pretty strong. So I don't have the exact points for that one, but I ended up scoring pretty high. Yeah, it was a good game. He had all of his stuff done up from like Horus Heresy era stuff, and it was in like the old Horus Heresy colors, like the red with gold, which is very cool. Yeah, they look great. Super nice guy. One of his friends offered me Jack Daniels. It was like 11:30 in the morning. I was like, I'm good, man.
That's right.
Hey, thanks. But yeah, they were all very nice. So yeah. The next one is, of course, the final round that we played out. Because I was just very tired at this point. I was like, I am deeply worn out. I was like, I'm gonna play out this 5th round and then like let's do like an early dinner. And we got to play on Conversion. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a scenario I don't have strong opinions about either way. It's fun. Yeah,
it's just kind of like generic
it's a scenario
dot map.
Well, and I like that the secondary is just like control objectives that are on the table. You're like, okay. Like,
right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I got to play into Joe. Joe is the guy that runs Meta Monday on the Reddit for
cool.
Warhammer Competitive. So that was kind of neat. I got a sticker at the end of it. He was playing Custodes, and he was playing Emperor's Emissaries, which is a sub-faction you don't see very often, or at least I haven't seen very often on the table. And it's basically their thing is they fight first always, and they ignore hit and modifiers.
This is like the sub-faction that's been starting to be a lot more common, I think, for Custodes competitive. I played against it as well at a recent event, and it's very good. I'm just glad it's not the -1 attack, guys. I don't like.
I know the people that everybody's like Shadowkeepers suck. And I'm like,
they're very good against my specific army. Like, I'm like all melee all the time.
Yeah. So he had 10 Sagittarum, 6 Virtus Praetors, the captain on the bike, the gigantic banner. This is the other thing about this faction or the sub-faction, which is annoying, is that their rough or their dense cover thing is 9 inches instead of 6 inches because they've got a special relic. It's not a relic. It's a warlord trait that lets him do that. He had 2 deep striking Alaris Terminators. He had like a Galatas Dreadnought. He had a little tank and 5 Sisters of Silence. And we set up and I won the roll and I went first and I took all of the zones and I shot at his Sisters of Silence and I didn't get my Fill No Pain off. And the only thing he could shoot at was my Abominant with his entire list. And I'd done the head math. So he gets 6 or 7 if he wants to expose his bike captain, which I didn't think he would, and he didn't. He gets 6 bike shots into it. He gets the 10 good shots from the Sagittarum. He gets 30 pretty good shots from the Sagittarum. He gets like 2 shots from the Galatas Dreadnought, and then he gets like a couple other random pot shots that don't matter. I ran the math in my head. I was expecting him to do somewhere between 15 and 20 wounds, which I'm like, all right, if this guy lives at 20 wounds, I have this zone. I will just push into your army with the Abominant, unlock his favor, and you will be in trouble, and you will be in the back half of the table, and I will just win this game. He proceeds to kill it with just the Sagittarum and 1 unit of bikes.
Those bike guns, man.
Yeah. So they're just better Meltas, but like, I mean, they're 85 points for that.
Those
model.
Guns hurt. Yeah.
They're just really good. Yeah, well, it wasn't even that. It was like, so he has 6 bike shots, right? He should hit all 6 of them because he hits on 2s rerolling 1s. And they should win 3 of them, and I should save 1.5 of them. And I have a reroll, so I should save 2 of them. Yeah. I saved 0 of them. And then he shoots me with 10 Sagittarum shots, which should hit 8 to 9 times, 9 times probably. They should wound me 3 times, and I should save, again, 1.5 of those. So I should take between like 3 and 6 damage from those.
Yep.
I saved 0 of those. And then he shot me 30 times with the Sagittarum little guns, and he should hit 25 of those. He should wound me about 8 times, and I should save 4 of them. So I should be handily alive at the end of this exchange, and I'm not. And so I scored 12 at the beginning of my turn, and I was able to play the mission really, 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 really well. I scored 12-12. Actually, it was 14-14 because of the extra 2 from the mission, then like 10-10. So I maxed primary. But the problem was, even with scoring everything I could on Storm of Darkness, I scored 12 points on that. I scored like 12 points on Ruthless Tyranny. I didn't score grind more than once because I just kept not finishing off his units. He kept finishing off my things. There was a very critical point in turn 3 that happened where I'm moving up the back of the field to his home objective, where he's got 1 Terminator with a banner up on that zone. So if I can get there and keep something alive, it's a big deal. And I have to expose my Desecrator. It's got the 5-up Feel No Pain. He gets Trajan onto it. He gets 2 bikes into it. After Trajan and the bikes go, he's alive at like 18 or something like that. And I made a critical error here. I should have piled into the bikes and then consolidated away from Trajan. And if I'd done this, I would have killed probably 1 bike because they're really hard to kill. But Trajan wouldn't have gotten to break his moment shackle. And instead of leaving me on 8, which is what ended up happening, I would have been left on 18, and I would have been able to fall back 12 inches onto that zone instead of 8 inches. And because I could only fall back 8 inches, Trajan got to heroically intervene onto me. Because he heroically intervened 6, and I had to go right over him. So this ended up being very important. If I'd gotten onto that objective, it swings the game by somewhere between 5 and 8 points, depending on how many banners that ended up knocking off. And this is important because the game ends 80-80 at the end of round 5. And like it came down to, he killed my last War Dog on an objective. He had a 2-wound Terminator on the objective. I auto-exploded the War Dog. I needed to roll a 3 or higher, and he needed to not roll a 6, and I rolled a 1. And like that was the game. Like that, the Abominant dying to basically things that had no business killing him. the Desecrator misplay, and then not rolling that 4. And that was the tie. And we were just both sitting there staring at the board in absolute shock at the end of it. Like,
That's funny.
that just happened.
Love it.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, Custodes are a hard matchup.
Oh, they're
for
super
Knights.
tricky. Again, it's the same thing that I mentioned about into the Deathwing, right? Where your attacks need to be very consistent, and they're just not. Like, you're just coin flipping every attack, and at best, right?
Yeah,
and like it's gnarly, and their stuff hits like a freight train, so they can kill knights pretty good. Yeah, and
Into
you
knights,
don't have a 4-up invuln, you know. So now that's if you get, they hate 4-up to hit, right? If you can activate that.
Yeah, no, like if that Abominant had survived on, like, averages say survives on 9. I've run the math. I've run 100,000 simulations on this attack sequence. He should have lived on 9. And if I'd gotten the rerollable 7 with the Feel No Pain, he should have lived on 17 or something like that. Or no, 15. Either way, like, if he just walks in, because that turn was important. He had 5 Sisters of Silence 2.5 inches away from the big knight. And so if he'd lived, he would have heroically intervened into them, killed 5 wounds, and then probably been able to kill another 5 wounds, because that's just 2 Sagittarum. And then that would have just been like the apocalypse. Like, if I can charge into his army at that point, I would have had CP for the -1 damage. He would have been hitting me on 4s, which means that he's only making, like, a unit of Sagittarum is only making 20 attacks. So he's hitting 10 of them with no rerolls, wounding 2 of them, 3 of them, right, at that point. And even the bikes, they're making 5 attacks when they charge. They hit me, so they hit me like 7 times or 8 times, and then they wound me, like, they wound me on 3, so they wound me like 4 or 5 times, but I -1 damage that, and it's like, well, you did 2 damage, congratulations. Right, and at that point, it's just like, that is the end of the game.
Yep. But, yeah.
And it didn't work out.
Well, it sounds like your game had some finesse to it. Mine sure didn't. I played against Blood Angels, and this game was great. This was a great last game. It was just nonsense. I'm a melee army. He's a melee army. He's way faster than me, like absurdly faster than me. Yeah. I went first, and I was like, I'm gonna run directly at you. And he looks at it for a sec, and he's like, he's like, based on some of the stuff I play, he's like, I usually play really conservatively and kind of bring things out like one at a time, but I feel like the right thing to do is to just move my whole army at you. And I was like, hell yeah. And so he moves just 15 Sanguinary Guard in a unit of Death Company and Dante and the Banner. And it was a lot of stuff. I have it. If the VOD goes up, I have a picture of it. It was bottom of 1. Just most of our armies in the middle of the table, and he charges into my fully buffed up Terminators. I had everything on them, and so proceeds 3 full rounds of just brutal melee combat in the middle of the table. There was not much thinking about what we were doing. It was just, well, all this stuff's in combat, I guess I'm going to attack that thing, and just doing that over and over again for a few rounds. MVPs here, the Demon Prince, yet again. He killed 10 Sanguinary Guard.
Like you do.
Yeah, just slaughtering them. And then he moved up and killed a unit of 5, I think, just Intercessors. And then went and killed the tank he had on the back line and took his home objective. Nice. And he denied the home objective as well, because he was on the zone with the tank for a turn, and those were the only models on it, so he didn't have that objective. I had a unit of Possess be able to go around and steal one of the objectives off of his Intercessors, but I didn't really have anything that could go over to another part of the table. In the end, my Terminators won the slog in the middle.
That's impressive. Not many things will win that against those.
Yeah. So I had one particularly lucky bit was when he forced 14 saves from his 2 damage hammers. I'm saving on 3s, and I succeeded 13 of them. And then I feel no pain both damage from the hammers. And at that point, my Terminators were never going to die, right? They were able to, it was just like, well, I just saved a comically high amount of damage. I can now just kind of like do my thing. But I wasn't really able to get Exalted Dark Gods because he was in the middle of the table, so I just kind of lost that secondary. He was able to largely deny behind enemy lines. Like I got a decent amount of points off that. And then it's just his stuff's so fast and it hits so like he did like I won that fight in the middle, but various units via deep strikes and things like that just went and like took my home objective and like kind of I just didn't have the speed to be in that many places at once.
Right.
And his stuff hits so hard. And like I made a mistake with my warp talons and like just a lot of weird little odds and ends. And so I ended up losing that one. But it was actually like I think I was only down by like 15 points or something. It wasn't like a blowout.
Nice.
And it was just a giant stupid slog in the middle of the table and it was great. Like we had a great time. We were just rolling dice at each other and seeing what exploded. And
Right.
it was a little brainless, but you know, it was a good time. I was like, you know, for like a last round when I'm very tired, this was great. This is exactly what I needed. I just kind of a head empty smash into each other. Game into Blood Angels. I learned that Sanguinary Guard are dumb as hell. That unit is wild. Yeah. But yeah, I thought they were cool. And hey, like Blood Angels won the whole event. It was a different Blood Angels, but Blood Angels did. So clearly they're overpowered. So I lost to a blatantly overpowered. I don't think that that's true. No. I do not believe that is the case. Yeah, that was all 5 rounds of LVO.
Yeah,
it was a really good time. It was cool. It was cool going there for Warhammer. The event was so big. There's so many people. I got to meet a lot of cool people. I got to meet Bricky from Adeptus Ridiculous, which I thought was super cool. He was super nice.
I got to meet Duncan Rhodes.
Yeah, you were doing the painting competition.
Yeah. So my knights came 8th out of many hundreds of people, and I got to be part of the top 10 judging thing, and I got to have a chat with Duncan for about 5 minutes. Yeah. It was very cool.
Yeah, he was mad at you for your...
Yeah, I have a House Griffith knight shattered on the face of my display board, and he plays House Griffith, and yeah, that was bad.
He's like, you take last. Walks away.
Yeah, actually, he was like, oh, well, he loses, and then he just walked off for a couple seconds. Like, oh, no.
That's very good.
Yeah.
So that's about it. It was a really cool event. We spent the next day just kind of goofing around playing Commander and hanging out with some other friends and checking out the Conquest tables and MCP and stuff like that. Because it was kind of nice actually just having Sunday just off, right? Like wasn't really anything going on. We just kind of hung out. We don't get to see each other that often. So.
Yeah. Should we briefly chat about like what we're taking away from this and what we're maybe changing going forward? And
I'm done with Nephilim. Let's do arcs.
Right.
That's my takeaway. I'm over Nephilim. I'm out.
Yes.
No, I'm excited. So honestly, what was funny was I've been kind of thinking about like other factions a lot. I was thinking about like playing around more with Chaos Knights, building a Sororitas army. So I was kind of like, I was sort of like starting to have one foot out the door a little bit on Chaos Marines for a little bit, at least. Like I was going to keep them and play around with them, but I got like a lot more excited about the faction after this. I just kind of was like, oh, there's all these interesting things I can do with arcs and all these other routes I can go with them. And there was actually like a lot more Word Bearers players than I expected. I ran into like 3.
Nice. And you got some sick objectives too.
Yeah, at the Warhammer store they had objectives that were like sub-faction based for like a ton of sub-factions. I got some super pretty Word Bearers ones. But yeah, I don't know. I got very hyped on Chaos Marines. I've been making lists that I keep sending you. I'm just coming up with dumb ideas and stuff, and so they kind of just hyped me back on the faction I was already playing anyway, which is always kind of fun.
I'm doing something weird. So I've got my Chaos Knights. They're painted, and I'll be playing them at events for probably the next 6 months pretty regularly. But I've played against a lot of Custodes, and I've always just been kind of jealous of hitting on 2s. So a lot of my plane ride home and then the many hours of driving through the middle of the night that I got to do, I was just thinking, like, how much would it cost to get the list that I played against?
Yeah.
And the answer is not as much as I thought.
When you have a friend sell you a bunch of stuff super cheap.
That helped. But like everything but one model in that list ended up being like just under $250. And I was like, well, okay. So this is my baby's first infantry faction. It's got 27 models in it, which is 3 times more than 9. So
Yeah.
you know, yeah. So I'm going to be rocking basically the list that I played against there because it looked sick as all heck, and I really liked some of the tech pieces, like the deep striking single Terminator piece. Or
Aren't they
piece of that
cool?
puzzle.
Yeah,
I was
you
just
can,
like,
they like,
this is great.
They like drop in and then like split or whatever.
They're separate. They don't even have to drop
there's
in
the other guys. Okay.
Yeah, so they drop in and they're just like, can you screen 250 mil bases across your entire deployment zone? Oh, you can't. Cool. 4 points
being able to get
behind
being
enemy
able to
lines.
get behind enemy lines off of like just single deep striking models is
Yeah, it's
pretty
wild.
good.
And they're not going to die either because they've got 2 up save, T5, like 4 up invuln, and if you stick them in cover, it's like, well,
yeah,
good luck. and so I'm experimenting with painting on metallic metal gold now, which maybe I'll post a little video of that when it's happening in the VOD. But I'm failing mostly, so we'll keep experimenting until we find something I like, or I'll just be like, all right, screw this, I'm priming these gold, let's go.
Yep, gets there sometimes. Very cool.
Yep.
Well, yeah, LVO was an awesome time. I've got it's funny, I came back and immediately just started lining up like a million events over the next couple months, so
yeah, I'm gonna go to a few, and then I think we're both hitting the Seattle Open in July.
That's the plan. Yeah, I think the next thing that we'll both be at is probably the Open in Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah, which tickets open for the day after we're recording this, so we better get those.
Yeah. Oh no, now everybody knows. I don't know how that's relevant, but now they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. I think that's about it for us. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us for a little while. Sort of the first one of these that we're going to be doing. And hopefully we'll make it a little bit more of a regular thing. We'll come in and talk about some more Hammer stuff. And yeah, because that's what we talk about a lot of the time anyway. So might as well. Do we want to plug our stuff? Do we care? What are we doing?
Yeah, we probably should. So the plan is we're going to do this twice a month. We've got a Patreon at patreon.com/lineofsightwargaming. If you want to come support us there, that's dope. It gets you access to our Discord and some special places in our Discord, and potentially like benefits like having me critique your painting or coming and playing games with us on the internet if you want to go that crazy. Also, we have a website, which is lineofsightwargaming.com. There's a whole bunch of Chaos Knights stuff on there, which has largely been positively received. And there's a little bit of We're Bear stuff, and I'll keep bugging Chandler to write more. And you can find our Facebook page, which is Line of Sight, it's a podcast page, and be very confused because there's a lot of games that we're writing about on there all the time.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. And I guess we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Come to play, stay to slay. Back and forth, come and go. I'll tell you what you wanna know. How to set your trap, watch as I attack. Try to play the game, try to stay sane. Working that brain, hope it's not in vain. You can try to play it safely, but there's no way you can break me. Time to get ready, the foe is coming steady, and we'll give it all we've got. Keeping it light, but holding on tight. It doesn't matter if we win or not. Gotta give it your all, even if you fall. We came to fight a fair fight, but now there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You can try, but I've got line of sight. You come and talking smack, well we ain't like that. Talk is cheap, hard work and skill is where it's at. Now when your men wilt, you best try not to tilt. And if you beat me, there's no need to feel guilty. I don't play too safely, and there's no one here to save me. Time to get ready, the foe always coming steady, and we'll give it all we've got. Keeping it light, but holding on tight. It doesn't matter if we win or not. Gotta give it your all, even if you fall. We came to fight a fair fight, but now there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You can try, but I've got line of sight. Did you think you could get away this time? How cute. Well, I've got line of sight. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. You can try.